Deion Sanders and Colorado are very confident in themselves over the past couple of days, and now I think they're in their villain era this season.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you may get your podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in today. I appreciate you guys. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the awkwardness around Colorado, the craziness around Colorado, and that is the social media sort of frenzy that they've been getting into over the past couple of days. If you guys aren't familiar, let me jog your memory, let me update you, let me provide you with context. So earlier this week, an article by The Athletic was released, and it was covering the guys that had left the program couple of them who went to other schools and panned out and did quite well, like Chase Soul at ECU, really good wide receiver, and Xavier Smith, who ended up at Austin P, which is a program in Texas, FCS program, or Tennessee, excuse me, and he ended up being FCS freshman All-American. Sorry, that was a tough one to get out there. So he went there and he found success there, and so he was kind of the focal point of the interview along with Soul. And they were asked about what it was like to leave the program in that manner. And so they expressed their frustrations, how they felt like Coach Prime and the staff didn't really take the time to get to know them. And it was just one of those things. So those quotes obviously go viral on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And one of the people who got a hold of it was Shedeur Sanders, Colorado quarterback. And he quoted it was like a tweet from The Athletic that had the quotes and said, "I don't even remember him, TBH. Bro had to be very mid at best." And so that has sparked like an outrage. And then everyone was defending him, and like his teammates were coming forward and being like, "Dude, he was FCS All-American. Like, come on, why are you shooting him down? You were an FCS player just 2 years ago now." And then Coach Prime tweeted something and people came at him, and for basically they wanted him to kind of reprimand Shedeur, and I guess in the public eye, and be like, "We don't do that here." But instead, Coach Prime, there was a player that was one of the players that was kind of coming at him was one of the Austin P players. And so a fan tweeted his stats, which he's a corner, solid stats, 20 total tackles, 12 assist tackles, 4 pass deflections. And Coach Prime commented, "Lord Jesus." Lord with the LAWD, not LORD, Lord Jesus. And then he was clearly kind of doing that to mock the guy for the lack of production. And so everyone is going crazy about this. And I have three takeaways that I want to hit on, because I know a lot of people are getting upset about this. There was a lot of controversial comments in my previous episode. And let me tell you, one, I don't mind that Colorado is doing this, I guess, because realistically, it is their sort of mantra. If they want to do this us versus the world, if they want to do this like everyone came for us, so we're going to come for everyone, go ahead. Do I think I would do that if I was in that position? No, I don't think I personally would. I don't think it's necessary, especially for Coach Prime to kind of shoot down a college athlete like that, because one, there's really no need to. I feel like he always talks about empowering young athletes, and then he's kind of mocking one. Now, obviously, they were coming for a son, so I get that. But that's my first take. Do they really need to do this? No. I think they're kind of opening themselves up to go from what was a really good story at one point last year to being like the villain of this year, if that makes sense. Like, I don't think that they're trying to be like this evil, when I think of villains, like sports teams that are villains, I think of like the old Raider teams that I remember growing up hearing about, where it was like they played dirty, like they were villains. The Pistons team that invented, or I think they were the ones that invented the Jordan rules, the ones that were fouling aggressively with like Isaiah Thomas, Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer, those guys, where they were fouling Michael Jordan aggressively. They were a villain team. Even LeBron James, when he went to the Miami Heat, villain team, because obviously he formed a super team. Everyone hated him for leaving Cleveland, and it was just sort of a villain team. So Colorado kind of reminds me of like, it feels like they're going down that path because they are purposely putting themselves out there on social media to kind of show they don't care about what anyone thinks, which if that's the route they want to take, go for it. Like Caleb Mathis is out here tweeting at people. He tweeted highlights of him versus Xavier Smith 101, where he routed Smith in 101s, which obviously, I mean, the film don't lie. It was a good route. I think 101s, it's kind of hard to tell. 101s are easier for the receiver because obviously there's just, they control the whole thing. Who else? Xavier Mata. Alejandro Mata commented laughing emojis at the guy's stats. So I think Colorado's just kind of like in this IDGAF phase where it's like, we don't care what you think about us, and that's fine. So I think they're embracing the villain role. That's my take. You guys comment below if you think they're embracing the villain role or if they're just kind of trolling. Maybe they're just trolling everyone and everyone's getting worked up for nothing, but I think they're embracing the villain role. Second thing, my second point. I know a lot of people, Colorado fans specifically, are upset that this article was published, and which I don't really think it has anything to do with it, that he went to Nebraska, because 24/7 Sports put out an article tracking where all of the talent that Coach Prime brought in ended up. So because I'm going to get to that a little bit later, because I think that there's a sort of issue that maybe Coach Prime addressed. We'll find out after this year, or during and after this year. But I think a lot of people are upset that the writer, I think his name is Max Olson, went to Nebraska. So they're like, this is a slander piece. It's not a slander piece. Realistically, you guys need to get over yourselves if you don't think that the biggest roster sort of flip in college football history was not going to be reassessed, was not going to be touched on ever again. He had over 50 players leave the program. Some of them by choice, some of them were shown the door, whatever it may be. If you don't think that many players were going to leave a program and everyone was just going to be like, okay, that's good, we're never going to hear from them again, you're delusional. I'm sorry, but you are. Now, I don't think the article was a slander piece. If anything, the article kind of showed the lack of talent that Coach Prime was working with. Like, I know a lot of you guys want to get worked up about the article, but it showed that the roster was not that good. The roster that he inherited was average, below average at best. I think they only had, it was like 15 guys ended up at Power 5 programs. Like, that roster was majority FCS, Group of 5, D2, and then there was a handful of guys that didn't even find landing spots. So no one is getting on Coach Prime for showing those guys the door. I completely agree that it was necessary to get rid of as many players as possible from that team, so that way he could win right away, so that way he could contend right away. Obviously, they didn't contend for anything right away, but they improved their record, and they were in a much better position last year than they were in the year prior. But again, it was still an interesting story because we have never seen 50 plus players leave a program at once. That's just not a thing that's happened. So the fact that Deion Sanders did it, and it was a Power 5 program, and it was done publicly, if you will, because obviously they had the well-off media stuff, it was going to be a story regardless of who wrote it. And I think people need to get over the fact that they're like bringing this back up. Yes, they're going to bring it back up. They're going to compare this roster to last year's roster. And 5 years from now, they're going to look back at where that roster ended up. Did any of them make it to the NFL? Did any of them transfer up to Power 5 schools? Were any of them productive players? That's going to be a storyline until those guys are gone. Until those 50 guys are done with college, it's going to be a storyline. So relax. Like, relax. I don't get the sort of infatuation with like, why would they bring this up? They're obviously going to bring it up. They want to bring that up. Everyone is interested in that. I'm sure that article has gotten millions of views because it is an interesting storyline. Like, what happened to the guys that Coach Prime asked to leave the program? And I don't think anyone in their right minds is disagreeing that he made the right decision. Those guys were not beneficial to the program that he was trying to build, and that's okay. People get kicked off rosters everywhere. You know, I think there's guys like Xavier Smith who FCS All-American. Maybe he could have been a depth piece. You know, the secondary for Colorado was all right. Maybe he could have been a depth piece. They had a guy that transferred to UCLA, offensive lineman. He did all right. Chase Soule went to ECU and was their leading receiver. Maybe he could have been a rotational guy. Deion Smith, running back that left for BYU. left for BYU. Maybe he could have added something to that running back rotation. It's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know why people are making this such a hostile thing. Like, it was a huge story. Coach Prime kind of made history in doing that the way he did. And now people want to know where it went, what happened after the fact. So relax. Like, it's not that big of a deal. I don't know where all this rage is coming from. I don't know where all this toxicity is coming from. It's not a slander piece. It is a follow-up piece. It's going to happen when Coach Prime this next year, if he does really well, they're going to be like, okay, let's look at how he attacked the transfer portal this time around. And if no one writes that story, I will write that story to make sure that it's not just only negative things, quote unquote negative. So everyone relax. And then my third thing. So first, I think Colorado's kind of embracing this villain role. Secondly, the transfer portal thing, the story itself is just a follow-up piece. It's not a slander piece. It just kind of wants if anything, it's showing that Coach Prime probably made the right decision. Like, that's a way to look at it. If anything, it's showing, you know what? Did he go about it the right way? Maybe it was a little harsh, but it's his job at stake. It's his staff's job at stake. And these guys had proven that there wasn't that many quality players there. So kind of the right decision. And then thirdly, so they're in their villain era. It was the right decision by Coach Prime. This social media stuff where it's like they're embracing all this hate and stuff, I just don't know if it's necessary. That's all I got to say. I don't think making fun of Xavier Smith is necessary. I don't think making fun of his teammates is necessary. I just don't feel like all this social media toxicity is necessary. I know a lot of you guys are taking like this us versus the world approach, which is fine. But in hindsight, like if Colorado struggles, all of these posts are going to resurface. Colorado fans are going to be attacked relentlessly. I just don't know why everyone feels the need to make it such like a toxic environment on social media. Like, I think, why can't we just all be like, you know what? Coach Prime had to do what's best for him. I saw that. Totally agreed with it. And it didn't work out for some of those guys, and it is what it is. There's no need to like kind of hammer it home that those guys sucked or whatever. Maybe like relax. Like, everyone take a step back. At the end of the day, these are young men pursuing a dream, chasing college football, and trying their best as student athletes. Not everyone is going to be Shedeur Sanders, and not everyone is going to be the guy that transferred out and didn't find a home. There's always guys that are going to make it to the NFL, and there's guys that college football is as far as they get. It is what it is. That's my take. That's my 2 cents on the matter. I don't feel like the social media shots were necessary. I feel like, if anything, that kind of, like, Coach Prime has always talked about lifting players up, lifting up young men. And I don't feel like he's lifting people up. And I would say that part's a little interesting, to say the least. The article, if anything, it supports Coach Prime. Like, you guys have to look at it from the lens of like, yeah, 50 guys left, and more than half of them did not end up at a Power 5 program. Those guys, the roster was not a good roster. It is what it is. Like, if anything, it supports Coach Prime. Like, I don't really understand it. It was an interesting follow-up, and we just need to kind of pump the brakes. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about Colorado's newest addition to the roster. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Monopoly Go. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that before, but there is just so much good stuff in the game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. You could get unique stickers you could trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends with when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it. Go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on with Monopoly Go. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, whether you agree or not, and making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We are talking about Colorado's new addition to the roster. They added to what is the number 6 ranked transfer portal class in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. And they currently now have 35 transfer commitments. So let me tell you a little bit about one Mr. RJ Johnson. If you guys weren't familiar, Colorado loses Cormani McLean. They lose Omarion Cooper. They lose Jaden Milner-Jones. And all of a sudden, the secondary goes from a strength to a position of need. I still think the talent is there. Obviously, you have Travis Hunter. Obviously, you have Preston Hodge. Obviously, you have DJ McKinney. 3 really good corners. They'll probably all be starting corners wherever they go. But the problem is you need depth. Injuries happen, tiredness, fatigue happens. You just need more depth at corner. So Colorado went out and landed Colton Hood, the Auburn transfer, former Georgia native, and I guess he is a Georgia native, but former Georgia product out of McDonough. I think it's McDonough, Georgia. Eagles Landing Christian Academy. They landed him, and then they went out and landed a fella by the name of RJ Johnson, who went to Arkansas and went to the same exact school. This is now their 4th commitment from Eagles Landing Christian Academy in Georgia. RJ Johnson offers a little bit of size, and I like this about him. And going back to the previous topic, you know why we don't make fun of people's stats? Because neither Johnson or Hood had stats last season. Johnson was a freshman, didn't log a stat. RJ Hood, I think he had like 3 total tackles or something. But that doesn't mean they're bad players. They are going to come in. They're going to provide depth. They are going to be developed by Deion Sanders, the best corner to ever do it, and Robert Livingston, a NFL mind who's been in the league or had been in the league for 12 years. So RJ Johnson comes in, and I think he's the biggest corner they have on the roster in terms of length and size, because he stands in at 6'2", and for reference, Travis is 6'1", 185. RJ is listed at 6'2", 180. I think DJ McKinney is a little smaller than that as well. So he comes in, offers some size once he kind of gets everything going. DJ McKinney, also 6'2". Okay, there we go. Preston Hodge is, I believe, around this range. Preston Hodge is listed at, drumroll please, Preston Hodge is listed at 5'11". So you have Travis Hunter, 6'1", DJ McKinney, 6'2". Hood is about 5'11", around 6 foot-ish. And then you have Preston Hodge, also 6'2". So you have some size in the secondary. These guys are going to be jamming the hell out of receivers, and you love to see it. You needed more depth at corner. I think Colorado addressed this position in a good way because DJ McKinney, he could be there for a couple more years. Preston Hodge, I don't know what his plans are. Maybe he has extra year of eligibility that could work out for him. He's listed as a junior, so he could technically be there for another couple years if he wants to be. And then you got these guys, RJ Johnson and then Hood, who they are both going to have 4 years of eligibility. They spent a year in SEC programs, so obviously they didn't play. Colton Hood, that is. Obviously they didn't play, but they still have this sort of SEC experience, if you will. Just being on a team offers experience. Now they need to get developed and they need to kind of be utilized in a way where they don't go to waste, unlike certain transfers that were in last year's class, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But if you're Colorado, you have to love this transfer class that Deion Sanders is putting together because they have, let me pull this up right here. Like I said, 36 commit or 35 transfers. They go out, they get RJ Johnson. They were able to get Brandon Hood, who's a running back that is the little brother of Colton Hood. He was going to be a preferred walk-on at Georgia. Adds more depth to the running back room. Not a transfer, but just a recent addition. Zach Owens, 6'6", 375, offensive lineman. Size, some kind of experience at Clemson. Nakai Hill Green, linebacker from Charlotte and Michigan. He's played a lot of football. 6'2", 632. I expect him to start. I expect him to be someone that they rely on immediately once he gets into Boulder. Rashad Amos, running back. Uber talented, rushed for over 1,000 yards this past season. He's someone that provides depth and will push Dallin Hayden for the starting role. Wyatt Hummel, Villanova. He's logged over thousands of snaps for the Wildcats. He's going to come in, provide some depth, possibly push for a starting role. Dallin Hayden, running back. Starting caliber running back right there. Rayan Buell, defense lineman, Ohio. Ton of experience. Decent size, 6'3", 277. Peyton Kirkland, offensive tackle from Texas, 6'6", 336. So Colorado, they got bigger, they got more experience, and now they're getting depth. And so this transfer portal class is really coming together, and Coach Prime just needs these guys to stick around because obviously it's easy to get talent, I guess you could say, but keeping the talent is another story, which Coach Prime hasn't always had the best luck at keeping players that he's brought in. So I'm going to go over that in a little bit, and I'm going to talk about what Colorado's biggest problem is with Coach Prime and how they possibly address it this offseason. But first, a word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Gametime. Let me tell you about Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You could save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event, whether it's concert, comedy, whatever it may be. They got tickets for you. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in and making me your first listen of the day. Like I said, let's talk about what I think Colorado's biggest problem is, because I think a lot of people are really hammering home on like Coach Prime lost these guys because they weren't good. Coach Prime lost these guys or left one of those guys to leave because they weren't good. Now, there's truth to that. I'm not going to disagree with that. That is the wholehearted truth. Coach Prime wanted a lot of players to leave so that way he could bring in more talent. And if you're someone like Colorado who struggles to, with other coaches at least in the past, who struggles to bring in high caliber talent, you have to love what Coach Prime is doing in terms of bringing in talent. Now, here is the issue with what Coach Prime does, and it's not really I don't know if it's a trend or a fluke, and we'll find out after this season, but they've made their living in the transfer portal. He's brought in a ton of talent through the portal, but it also hasn't worked out as expected. So 24/7 Sports' Chris Hummer did a deep dive into the 72 players that Coach Prime brought in last year, whether it be high school or the transfer portal. And of those 72, 61% of them have left the program, are no longer with the roster. So what does that tell you? That tells me that one, and I think there's a couple reasons why I think Coach Prime fixed this. One, last year they were just bringing in transfers that they were hoping to fill roster spots. They wanted everyone off the roster, and they just wanted guys that had played college football and were like, okay, you bring experience at defensive line, come over here. We don't know what your role is, but we know you could bring experience, and you're maybe possibly better than what we had. Two, they needed as many guys as possible. So they weren't really looking for quality, whatever it may be. They were kind of going for that quantity. And that hurt them a lot. Also, and I could think we could say this in the coaching changes, I think Sean Lewis was a really good offensive mind. I think it was unfortunate that his system didn't work with the talent that they acquired. It was unfortunate that he did not seem, I don't know what was going on behind closed doors, obviously, but it was unfortunate that he did not seem to try to make adjustments to help the offense improve. So he leaves the program. Charles Kelly, that defense was a mess. I don't think it was all on Coach Kelly. I think it was a lot of like, they didn't have the talent they need. The team wasn't disciplined. There was a lot of guys that hadn't played before being thrust into starting roles, and I think it showed. Now, do I think there could have been adjustments made? Do I think there could have been focus on discipline and less penalties? Possibly, but that's easier said than done. So both of those guys are out. He goes and gets Robert Livingston from the NFL, 12 years, literally a dozen years in the NFL, has experience, knows what it takes to get to the next level. He brings in a new offensive line coach in Phil Loadholt, who has experience at Oklahoma, former NFL offensive lineman. He brings in a guy like Warren Sapp, who he's not a defensive line coach, but he's going to be helping out with the defensive line a lot. He's going to be helping out with the offensive line and how to figure out counters and stuff. He brings in or kind of promotes or keeps, or I guess he was already promoted, but Pat Shurmur was a part of the team last year, stepped into the offensive line or offensive coordinator role. He comes in and now he gets to sort of run the offense his way. He knows what didn't work. He knows what does work. And so I think Coach Prime is adjusting the coaching around him, which was necessary. The talent acquisition or the talent identification process for Colorado was an issue. They were bringing in anyone. This year, they're bringing in guys that should play, that should start, that should contribute. If these guys don't, then you have to start questioning what's going on in Boulder. Why is it not working when you're bringing in talented guys? Because they have a lot of talent on this roster. This roster is worlds better than last year's roster. But if it doesn't work out, what is the problem? I think it will work out. I'm not saying it won't, but we will have to consider that if they have issues next season. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs, making me your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.